The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest or the most praised. It's the one who healed without applause, who rose without needing a crowd, and who moves silently even while being targeted. And if that person is you, congratulations. You've just become their worst nightmare. Let me break it down for you. In nature, the most venomous creatures don't make a sound. They don't roar. They blend in, strike with precision, and leave a lasting impact. Sound familiar? That's you, the chosen one, the underestimated anomaly, the divine force the world tried to bury, not realizing you weren't dying. You were planting yourself deeper, anchoring your roots to rise even stronger. But now the roles have reversed. You're no longer just surviving, you're strategizing. And your haters? They're spinning in circles, scrambling like it's the Olympics, desperate for breath, hoping the universe won't hand you what's rightfully yours. Because if it does, they know it's game over. So get ready, because in this video, we're pulling back the curtain on why no one, and I mean no one, has ever been so quietly dangerous as you. And why those who tried to bring you down are now moving like they just saw a ghost. Because spiritually they did. Quick pause, family. If this message is hitting home and you want to support this sacred work, feel free to buy me a coffee. It helps keep this space alive with truth, clarity, and light. Links in the description. And if you're feeling this, drop number 88 in the comments. Let's dive in. Reason number 1, you're dangerous because you operate outside the algorithm of control. You don't follow the script that society tries to hand out like a template. While most people are out here chasing approval, craving attention, or needing likes to feel validated, you've detached from that entire system. You're not moved by trends, peer pressure, or the false rules crafted by insecure people sitting in powerful positions. You're a mental, emotional, and spiritual outlier. And that makes you unpredictable. An unpredictability that's pure danger to those who rely on control. Most people are conditioned to react in predictable ways. They're triggered easily. They cave under pressure. They mold themselves to fit in. But not you. You rewired yourself. You deleted the mental programming they tried to install. You questioned everything you were taught. You unlearned the lies. And now you navigate from your inner compass. Not out of fear, not out of guilt, not out of desperation. You move with purpose, not performance, and that alone shakes the system. This world thrives when you stay small, stay confused, stay obedient. But you broke that loop, and that makes you a threat. People don't fear you because you're loud or confrontational. They fear you because you're intentional. You think before you act. You don't feel the need to explain every move. You're not broadcasting your plans online for validation. You move, and the shift is felt without a word. That's spiritual warfare at its highest level. That's the kind of danger that doesn't scream. It simply exists with power. And here's the most powerful part. You didn't become this overnight or by accident. This version of you was built through storms, through betrayal, solitude, heartbreak, and self-discovery. You studied your own soul. You walked the hard path when shortcuts were right in front of you. And now you see life's matrix for what it truly is. That's why the people who once dismissed you are now disturbed in your presence. You're not playing their old game anymore. You've rewritten the board. You're operating from a signal they can't trace, and that's what terrifies them. Number 2, you are dangerous because you embody everything they tried to destroy, and it survived. You're living proof that their destruction failed. You weren't supposed to still be here, let alone rising. The ones who hated you most never expected your survival, much less your transformation. They tried to break your spirit, tarnish your name, and damage your mind. They engineered moments meant to erase you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. This wasn't just about hurt, it was about obliteration. But here you are, standing taller than ever. That alone is your silent revenge. Your continued existence is their punishment. They can't even look at you without confronting their failure. You are living, breathing evidence that their efforts were powerless. You weren't supposed to grow through that chaos. You weren't supposed to find strength in the void or clarity in the confusion. But you did. You didn't just survive. You evolved. Every wound sharpened you. Every betrayal birthed discernment. Every loss whispered wisdom. That kind of transformation terrifies people who never wanted you to realize your own power. It's not just your presence that rattles them. It's your symbolism. You represent the truth they've buried, the guilt they deny, the jealousy they mask with forced kindness. You are their mirror. Just existing brings it all back. You don't even have to speak. Your life speaks volumes. They didn't hate the version of you that was struggling. They feared the day you'd wake up to your greatness. That day is here, and now they're powerless to stop it. They can't twist your story, can't gaslight your intuition, can't sabotage your spirit. You're not just a survivor. You're a living threat to every lie they told about you. And that's why they're running. Number 3, you're dangerous because you no longer play the villain or the victim. You play the architect. You've stopped caring how they label you. You're not trapped in the cycle of trying to be seen as good or constantly defending yourself from false accusations. That version of you, the one who used to over-explain, overgive, and overextend, no longer exists. You've transcended those roles. You don't need their approval, and you're done performing for their sympathy. Now you've taken on a higher role, the architect of your life. You build without noise, move without warnings, and observe without reacting. Your silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. While they're still stuck trying to tear down who you used to be, you're using every ounce of that pain to build something new. Brick by brick, you're designing a future out of the very rubble they created. Every betrayal taught you where not to build. Every lie taught you where to reinforce your walls. Every attempt to break you handed you the blueprint for resilience. That's why they're angry. That's why they're afraid. You're no longer interested in being part of their emotional drama. You left the circus. You stopped showing up to fights you never needed to attend. While they scream for attention and play roles for applause, you're quietly building something so solid they can't even comprehend it. You don't want to win arguments anymore. You want to win your peace. And now that you've found it, they can't touch you. They can shout lies or cry victim all they want, but you're out of reach. You're too busy creating a life they don't have the vision or discipline to understand. You're not reacting to chaos, you're crafting destiny. And the scariest part for them? You're doing it without ever looking back. That's power, that's control, that's what makes you truly dangerous. Number 4, your presence awakens guilt in people who've convinced themselves they had none. You're dangerous in a way that can't easily be explained. And that's exactly why some avoid you altogether. You don't go around calling people out, dragging up the past, or shouting your truth. Yet somehow, just by showing up, people feel exposed. Not because of your words, but because of your energy. Your presence alone disrupts the carefully constructed comfort they've built around their lies, their false identities, their ego-driven performances. It all starts to glitch when you walk in the room. Why? Because your authenticity creates discomfort in those who abandoned theirs long ago. You don't need to remind them of what they did. Your growth, your glow, your survival speaks volumes. That's what makes you dangerous. You carry no bitterness, yet they still feel the burn. You've forgiven what they thought would destroy you. You've healed the wounds they didn't even have the courage to look at in themselves. And now when they see you, they're not just seeing you. They're seeing a reflection of everything they'll never become. It's a spiritual pressure they weren't ready for. You never shame them, but your evolution makes them question their own stagnation. You never threaten them, but your inner peace shines a spotlight on their chaos. You never expose them, but your truth made their lies too loud to ignore. So they distance themselves. They gossip. They say you've changed. But what really happened is that you grew past their nonsense. They're not running from what you did. They're running from who they became when standing next to your light. Because the harsh truth is, some people can't handle brightness unless they control the switch. But you became your own source, and now you shine in ways they'll never be able to dim. Number 5, you turn trauma into strategy, and that's what makes you untouchable. You're not dangerous because you're angry. You're dangerous because you're focused. You took every betrayal, every loss, every manipulation and backstab, and you studied it. While they thought they were breaking you, you were silently watching, mapping out every move, learning their patterns, decoding their tactics, and sharpening your intuition. What was meant to traumatize you became your training ground, and now you know the game better than the ones who tried to play it. They were setting traps while you were building vision. You learned how fake love feels. You recognized how manipulation often wears a smile. You felt the weight behind fake apologies and saw the silence behind passive aggression. They kept planting emotional landmines, hoping you'd keep stepping on them. But you stopped walking blindly. Now you're the one who moves with awareness, purpose, and strategy. You don't show up without reason. Every step you take is intentional. That's why you're untouchable. You're no longer reacting to survive. You're moving with precision. Your emotions don't lead your decisions. Your discernment does. You're not paranoid. You're prepared. Experience taught you to think like a threat without ever becoming one. You've studied chaos so deeply that it no longer surprises you, and because of that, it can't catch you. And now that you've gone quiet, they're panicking. They can feel the shift but can't trace it. That silence they hear, it's not peace. It's the quiet before consequences arrive. They can't bait you, rattle you, or twist your mind anymore. You don't play with snakes. You study them, outgrow them, and, when needed, you move in ways that ensure they'll never forget the lesson. You're not wandering through war zones anymore. You own them. Number 6, you're immune to exile because you've mastered solitude. That's what makes you dangerous. They thought isolating you would crush your spirit. They believed that pushing you to the margins would leave you desperate, begging to be let back in. But instead of breaking, you built. While they whispered behind closed doors, plotted in silence, and left you out, you were quietly reconstructing your soul. You sat with the loneliness. You faced the shadows they hoped you'd never confront. And the deeper you went, the stronger you became. You didn't just survive isolation, you mastered it. You stopped chasing validation, stopped seeking approval from the crowd. You no longer needed their invitations or their praise. Instead, you saw yourself fully and clearly. You stopped knocking on doors that led nowhere and built one of your own, a door that only truth, alignment, and divine frequency can enter. They never expected that. They thought exile would shrink you, but it only gave you room to expand, without noise, without manipulation, without distraction. Solitude became your sanctuary. It stopped feeling like punishment and started becoming your power. While they chased clout, attention, and chaos, you remained calm, grounded, and unshaken. You've tapped into something deeper: clarity, purpose, divine guidance. And now the very ones who exiled you are left stunned. You're glowing in the same space they abandoned you in. They believed their rejection would end you, but it was only the beginning. You've thrived without their presence, their support, or their access. You are immune to exile because you've already walked through spiritual isolation, that sacred silence where even God seemed distant. Still, you breathed, you built, you endured, and from that void, you rose untouchable. They can't exile someone who no longer fears being alone. You don't just survive in solitude, you resurrect. You turn empty spaces into arenas of transformation. And now they're scrambling to understand how you turned exile into elevation. Number 7, your intuition sees in 4K what others miss in plain sight. You are dangerous because your spiritual discernment is razor sharp. It slices through noise, deception, charm, and even well-packaged good intentions. While others get distracted by words, gestures, and surface-level appearances, you're reading energy, timing, and silence. You don't need explanations. Your spirit hears what's left unsaid. You sense betrayal while it's still being disguised as loyalty. You detect envy wrapped in compliments. You feel lies before they're spoken. That kind of vision makes people incredibly uncomfortable, especially the ones hiding behind curated masks. In a world that celebrates logic and dismisses intuition, your spiritual clarity is a threat. You're not just reading the room. You're decoding the frequency of it. You're unmoved by sweet talk and not fooled by temporary gestures. People talk, but your soul listens for the vibration beneath their words. That's why your presence shakes them. They may not know exactly what you see, but they know you see something. And that unsettles them more than any confrontation ever could. You're not waiting for proof. You trust your divine signals. You've lived through too many betrayals, faced too many masks, and been burned too many times to ignore your intuition. Now you don't need receipts. You've got revelation. And when your energy shifts, it's not a reaction. It's a decision based on clarity. You've already seen the outcome before the story unfolds. You're the kind of person who makes liars nervous and manipulators hesitate. You don't argue, you detach. You don't accuse, you observe. And when you step back, that's when everything starts unraveling. Because your presence doesn't force truth out. It simply can't coexist with lies. They call you paranoid, overly sensitive, or intense, not because you're wrong, but because they're not used to someone who sees through performance before the act even begins. That's what makes you lethal. Not with weapons, but with vision. Number 8, you shatter generational curses that your enemies once used as chains. That's what makes you so dangerous. You didn't just heal yourself. You disrupted the entire system that kept your lineage bound. You saw the deep-rooted patterns, the silence, the shame, the secrecy, the self-sabotage, and with unwavering conviction, you said, "It ends with me." That kind of courage doesn't come with applause. It comes with loneliness, with resistance, and often with resentment, especially from the very people who needed that healing the most. You weren't just fighting for your own peace. You were dismantling the cycle of dysfunction that had kept generations locked in survival mode. Most people inherit pain and pass it on, normalize it, wear it like identity, emotional numbness disguised as pride, trauma wrapped in tradition. But you dared to see the pattern and question it. You refused to repeat what was familiar simply because it was expected. You said no to the unspoken rules, no to the silence around abuse, no to the performative strength, no to the "this is just who we are" narrative. You took those inherited chains, melted them in your inner fire, and forged something new: boundaries, truth, accountability, healing. And while people might romanticize the idea of breaking curses, in real time, they often attack the one brave enough to do it. You became the mirror they never asked for, the one that reflected the painful cost of staying the same. You weren't just rebelling, you were threatening the comfort of dysfunction. And here's the irony. Many of your enemies are still trapped in the same cycles you escaped. They didn't free themselves, so they hate that you did. You carry entire bloodlines, not from obligation, but out of deep honor. And while they try to chain you with guilt, you've already evolved beyond needing to explain your freedom. You didn't run from the fire. You walked straight into it and burned the lies to ash. You didn't just survive the curse, you dismantled it. That's why you're unforgettable. Number 9, you've made the spiritual world your fortress, and now the physical world fears you. You're dangerous because you've tapped into realms most people don't even believe in. While others wrestle with surface-level battles, you've learned to wage war in the spirit. You stopped fighting people and started aligning with forces that don't need to be seen to be real. Your fortress isn't made of brick and stone. It's built from faith, discernment, and divine energy. Now your presence alone speaks. Your name, your aura, your vibration. It's felt before you even walk in the room. Your haters aren't reacting to your actions. They're reacting to your frequency. You've become a walking shift in the atmosphere. Just the mention of your name sends ripples. It makes people pause, rethink, hesitate. They feel something approaching, and it's not a physical threat. It's a spiritual disruption they can't control. The world around you resonates differently because you've aligned with divine truth, higher purpose, and sacred power. They call it superstition or luck, but what they're really experiencing is resonance. You've activated something untouchable within you, and now the energy around you responds accordingly. You don't have to speak to expose someone. You don't have to act to make someone uneasy. You've tapped into something far beyond visibility, the unseen force that shapes everything. And now your enemies study you, trying to decode your power, to understand how you move so unshaken. But they can't replicate it because it's not something that can be faked. They see it, but they won't admit it, because admitting it means acknowledging a power greater than their control. And that's exactly what makes you so dangerous. You don't chase power. You are power. Number 10. You became dangerous the moment you stopped trying to prove your worth. Everything shifted when you realized that the real game wasn't about proving yourself. It was about releasing the need to prove anything at all. For so long, you lived by their rules, chasing validation, molding yourself to meet their expectations, measuring your value against standards that were never meant to honor you. You worked overtime trying to earn respect in rooms that never even saw your light. But then came the awakening. You saw it clearly. The more you tried to prove yourself, the more trapped you became in timelines and roles that weren't even yours. You were playing by someone else's script, hustling for a seat at a table that never respected your presence to begin with. And then you stopped, not because you forgot your worth, but because you finally understood that your worth was never theirs to define. You stepped away from the noise, the pressure, the performance. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was a declaration of sovereignty. You stopped fighting to be seen and started seeing yourself. You no longer asked for permission. You no longer explained your existence. You began living in your truth, on your terms. That's what made you dangerous. They couldn't control you anymore because you weren't playing their game. Your peace, your silence, your stillness. None of it is passive. It's potent. It's nuclear. It shakes rooms without a sound, moves mountains without effort. You realize that your value doesn't need to be defended. It just is. Solid, sacred, untouchable. Now, the very people who once tried to shrink you, define you, contain you, can't find the language to understand who you've become. You're not competing. You're not explaining. You're not even in their arena anymore. You built your own. And that shift, that's when you became truly dangerous. Number 11, you deconstruct false identities and people resent you for it. You're dangerous because you have the uncanny ability to unravel the illusions people build around themselves. Not through judgment or confrontation, but simply by being real. When you enter someone's life, you're not just another presence, you're a mirror, a reflection that forces them to confront what they've been hiding from. Your authenticity exposes the fragility of their facade, the masks they wear to blend in, the personas they construct to be accepted. All of it starts to crack when you're near. You don't attack with words. You don't need to tear people down. Your clarity alone speaks volumes. You show up with truth, confidence, and alignment. And that energy reveals the lies they live in. It's not something you try to do. It's just who you are. And that's what makes you so powerful and so threatening. In a world where many would rather live in comfortable illusions than face uncomfortable truths, your presence becomes a disruption. You're not out to destroy anyone, but the truth you carry forces choices, evolve or remain fake. And for those who aren't ready to evolve, your presence feels like destruction. People fear being exposed more than being attacked. And you don't expose anyone. You simply exist in truth, and the light of your presence burns away everything that isn't real. That's why they either love you or resent you, because you don't give them the option to stay asleep. You don't convince or persuade, you just are. And that being strips away everything that's false. For those living in masks, that's more terrifying than anything else in the world. You're not a threat because you're trying to change them. You're a threat because when you show up, the illusion can't survive. Number 12, you stopped needing permission to be powerful, and that's what makes you dangerous. There was a time you sought validation, shrank yourself to fit into spaces that didn't honor your worth. But once you realized your power was never theirs to define, everything changed. Now you walk with certainty, unapologetically owning your presence. You no longer chase recognition. You radiate self-worth that terrifies those who once thrived off your insecurities. They fed off your doubt. But now you've embodied your power so fully, their opinions are irrelevant. What makes you a threat isn't just your strength. It's the fact that you no longer need anyone's approval to be who you are. You've become the mirror they can't stand to face, a reflection of the potential they never claimed. Number 13, you've mastered transmutation, turning opposition into power. What was meant to break you has become your fuel. Every lie, every attack, every attempt to discredit you has only made you sharper, more focused, more relentless. You don't just endure negativity, you convert it. You're an alchemist of energy, transforming every insult into insight, every betrayal into breakthrough. While they try to tear you down, they unknowingly feed your rise, your glow. It's built from the very stones they threw. They thought they were ruining you, but they were handing you the blueprint for greatness. Now they're just energy donors to you,